back to Evil's Comics. This guy right here is Evil Mike, or Mike if you prefer, and I got a review for you today by request by my dude Jose Matas. I'll have his name right here for you. But the review in question is Somna, I think that's how you pronounce it, from DSTLRY, issue number 1. It is written art by Becky, Cloonan, and Tula, Lotay. Then we got colors by Loughridge, Cunniffe, and then Tula, Lotay. And then we got letters by Lucas Gattoni. I know I messed up a lot of those pronunciations. I'm sorry, no form of disrespect, just trying to pronounce them. Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe on this guy's channel. It does help. It's all free, doesn't cost you anything. You might want to hit the bell. I don't have a schedule. I kind of just release them when I can. Alright, so let's get into it. So before we get into this, there's a huge warning that goes into this book. If you have any kind of problems with nudity or sex, this book is riddled with nudity and sex. Also, the subject matter might be a little touchy because it takes place during the witch trials and burnings. So if you're not bothered by that, I'd say continue, but if any of that does bother you, you might want to click away. Alright, so with that warning, let's get into it, right? So this book, it jumps right into it. Right before we do, it gives us this quote. It says, "When we look into the nature of demonic power, comma, we find it to be insatiable, comma, in its lust for destruction and chaos." And it's by Henrik Kramer. Malus Malacarium is the book it's quoted from. I don't know if this is a real quote, but it does apply to what we're about to get into. I kind of mentioned that it's about the Salem witch trials. It doesn't mention where exactly this takes place, but it's kind of the setting. So basically, we start out in a dream, and I didn't mention this, but the cover says that this is a bedtime story. We are with our main character. We find out a little later that her name is Ingrid, and she is having a dream walking through a forest. She steps into this puddle, and most of the book is narrated from her, inner dialogue. But she's talking about walking through this forest, feeling free and everything, and then she gets to this pond. She puts her foot into the pond, and instantly she feels someone that's there. And like the way she states it is someone that's been there, waiting for her, kind of thing. There's not a lot I can show you. I mean, most of it that she's talking about is in shadows for now. But her dream kind of goes to a different place, and we have this. I wasn't sure if she was actually awake at this moment. No, but she's still dreaming, and we have the person that she's been talking to. But the person is trying to get her to wake up, and in this moment she kind of does, but then realizes she's not awake. She's still asleep. Many will know what this is. I do. I'm very familiar with it. It's called sleep paralysis, where you're awake but not awake. You can't move. You're stuck, and there always happen to be shadow people during these things. This shadow person talks to her, and at first, he just mentions her name. She gets the assumption that he wants her to follow her, and she doesn't understand because she can't move. But he doesn't want her to follow her, and we get this immense sex scene here. Well, not really. She's basically pleasuring herself. The guy kind of stands over her and watches, and she does this. And as she does this, there's a ripple effect, and all of a sudden she wakes up. Her husband, lying next to her while she's sleeping, mentions that she's been moaning and groaning and talking in her sleep very loudly, and it's disturbing his sleep. We meet her husband, Roland, and he's basically getting ready for some kind of big assignment the next day, making sure his wife is okay. We find out he's the bailiff, and he's going to be a bailiff at one of these witch trials. It happens to be tomorrow. It happens to be a person that lives in the village with them, that is accused of the witchery, the witchcraft. And basically, we get a scene right here after she does wake up, and she is fully awake at this moment, where we find out that she's a very good wife, I would say. You know, she's very loving, very caring. She's interested in his job. She knows it's stressful for him. He comes off very cross at this moment, but he's basically really stressed, and he doesn't really look into the dream part. So she ends up saying she's not feeling well because the witch trial is happening, you know, that day. He's leaving to go to work, but at the moment he's leaving early. She claims she's being sick. She lies. She ends up going to watch the witch trial from this hill. And I mean, granted, that's kind of one of those things that you wouldn't, I mean, if you had, most people wouldn't want to attend. It's kind of weird that a lot of people did back then, you know. But it was an event kind of thing. But she's standing up on the hill and she's thinking about this woman. We find out this woman is named Greta. And she's dreaming about like what Greta's going through while being burned alive. They do mention the trial, and the trial is kind of like a joke because they mention it in a matter of minutes, and then the burning goes on. We jump over and we meet one of Ingrid's friends, and it's this girl named Maya. And she brought her son. We find out she's married. Her son's name is Nicholas. And they basically come up here talking about, you know, Greta and what she did, and the accusations that were against her kind of thing. And it's kind of this weird conversation between these two people that were talking about a girl that they knew that happened to be burning alive while they're sitting there. So it's kind of a different approach to the witch trial. I don't know. Eventually they you know, Maya has to leave. She goes back to her home, and Ingrid kind of gets weirded out and disgusted by the fumes alone. She goes back home. She gets everything ready for her husband, knowing it's going to be like a bad day when he gets home, and sure enough it is. It was very stressful. Even though she couldn't see the burning, he could. He was right there, and the way he explains it, it was like one of the most horrific things that he's ever seen. He also mentions that it didn't go down as planned. So she ends up trying to comfort him, and like in a sexual nature, and he gets appalled by it. He's like, "What are you doing, man? I just want to go to sleep. I'm so stressed out." She's kind of like, "Hey, I'm just trying to be your wife. I thought this would work. I'm sorry, you know." So the next scene over, we get the scene where she's back in bed, and of course she's with our mysterious stranger, and then she goes back into a sexual nature where she is pleasuring herself with this guy. Eventually we get a conversation with this guy, and it's all about him, like basically the attachment of them together. This moment, you know, is kind of like a secret kind of thing, and that's kind of what this amounts to, besides the actual like sexual thing. But during it, she kind of gets frightened. He gets to this point where like it wants him to look, and all of a sudden she wakes up because her husband is actually waking her up because she's talking in her sleep again, and she lashes out and scratches him, you know, instantly, like, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know, and it actually goes into this part where the husband is actually like, "I'm sorry, you know, I'm all stressed out. I know this has to be carrying over to you. That's why you're all stressed out and can't sleep, you know. Let's just forget about this and go to bed," kind of thing. So the next day we got Ingrid, and she's in the market. She ends up like, they have this horrific scene where they explain how they leave the witch's body where they burn for days on days, and it's supposed to be like, we do this to keep the devil away, like the devil's really scared of a corpse, you know. But they do it anyways, you know, to try and ward off the devil. So anyways, she, after walking past that corpse and having weird thoughts, she ends up running into her friend. Her friend pulls her to the side, and they end up going around this hidden passage, you know, throughout the village, and they come to this one house at the very end. I will mention out that there's this dude in the background that's kind of watching them. Eventually we find out who's in the house, and it's the husband to the woman that just got burned. His name is Sigurd. And the reason why they're coming here is because Maya's like, "Man, hey, look at that dude. He's handsome as hell. Like, I know your husband's not treating you right. You know, why don't you go get a little quickie from this dude?" Like, Ingrid is appalled by this. She's like, "Bro, we just burned her, you know, his wife, you know, yesterday. What the fuck, you know?" They end up split. Like, Maya, you get the sense that Maya's like gonna go back for this dude. but that's kind of the hint at the whole like situation. We have a like a page where Ingrid goes back. She's trying to get these thoughts out of her head. It shows her getting ready for her husband to come back home. He does. They end up going to sleep, and that's kind of the end of the first chapter. The end of the beginning of the second chapter, and this is going to go really quick. Basically, it's back in the dream state, and it's more conversation between, you know, this dude and and our girl, and most of it's like, hey, you know, this is kind of our secret, you know, it's kind of your place, you know, and really deep down, it's what she wants. She wants to be sexually active with her husband, and she's not getting it, so of course her dreams are leading into that situation. But eventually, like any dark demon does, eventually he starts getting into like a scary place where he starts like, hey, I want you to do me this favor. The next time you pleasure yourself in the real world, I want you to think of me there, and that will make me physical, kind of thing. So she, for some reason, she actually does this. She creeps out into this barn to be secretive so her husband doesn't hear her. She actually does end up pleasuring her. And as she does, you know, you can kind of see this dude in his face, you know. You get the assumption that he's being made real. The next day you get this happy scene where her husband does notice that she was in the barn or whatever, but it kind of plays out like, you know, her husband's like, hey, I got this other job, they'd like that I'm a witch hunter, I need to go hunt down this witch. Before he leaves, Ingrid thinks like, hey, this is going to be the last time I see him for like a month. Maybe I try and get some sex at him. And she tries again, and this time it isn't in an overly sexually way. She just tries to kiss him, and again this dude her husband pushes her away like, no, I'm about to leave out the door, I gotta go. You know, he's appalled again. So we get this scene where like she goes back to the dream world. She runs out to the forest away from the house this time. When she goes back into the dream world, she meets this guy, and this time he's like, hey, since you did what I told you, I got a secret for you this time. Come with me. And so he takes her to the forest, and they end up going to this cottage that she doesn't recognize at first. They get to this cottage, and sure enough, inside the house, it's the house of that guy, Sigurd. And inside with Sigurd is Maya. Maya's in there, and they're basically, you know, fucking their brains out. And we get this backstory that, you know, Greta was basically burned to, you know, hide the fact that Sigurd and, you know, Maya had been messing around this whole time. But that we don't get the full details on how Greta was brought into the situation, but we do get the hint that Sigurd did it to please, you know, like, you know, Maya from getting caught or something like that. We got like 2 pages left, and basically at the end of this, you know, we got this guy in the background like, haha, I showed you the secret. Now, in the background, Ingrid feels really weird about this, seeing the secret and stuff like this, but this guy's like, now I showed you a secret, it's time for another secret. You know, it's not just a secret, it's going to be a gift for you this time. That's actually where the book leaves off, is just her kind of running back to her house in a panic looking, you know, with him behind her in the shadows. But that is the book. It is going to be a 3-part series, I think so, and the next one drops in January. We do get a couple of cover hints to the second one, but nothing that leads into what the story will be about. But that is my review on this book. Honestly, it was fantastic. I didn't know what it was going to be about. I saw the cover, and it's a, you know, gatefold cover, but I didn't really know what it was going to be about. I can say the bedtime story, like I pointed out, I don't see how that, like, this isn't really something I would tell anybody at bedtime, but I'm really intrigued. There's a lot of questions. But hey guys, that's my review. Let me know down below what you thought about this book. Any thoughts to, you know, what's coming in the future. I have a sense that eventually this girl is going to be accused of some witchcraft by her friend, but hey guys, alright, that's all I got.